let's get it. Come on, I'm with it, guaranteed. When we hit it, I'ma split it with your partner. If we gon' get it, let's get it.
Yo, Raw and Uncut. You saw the thumbnail. You know what time it is. Who was Joaquin Figueroa, or better known as Scrappy? Who was Joaquin Figueroa? Well, my interaction with the guy was very limited as far as one-on-one. In my lifetime, I met him about 3 different times. A couple times when he was a youngster, once right before he ended up doing what ultimately would lead to his demise. You see, when I first met him, it was early 1990s. We're living in the Hawaiian Gardens, better known as the Palm Gardens. Many people in Fresno, California, they know the area. They know the spot where that's at. Right there in the vicinity of Radio Park. You know, off of Angus and Weldon, in between Angus, Orchard, on Weldon. And that's a big complex. Used to be a lot of activity there, a lot of drug activity, a lot of gang activity. There was TRGs in there, Bulldogs in there. There was Crips in there. Didn't see many Bloods. But we had some issues in there with a few different gangs. We lived there a couple of different times in the 90s. 91, 94, I believe. And Joaquin, or as most folks called him, Scrappy, he had been known since he was a youngster to be a hothead. He had been known since he was a youngster to be a torpedo, to be ready to get down, to be ready to scrap. Hence the name Scrappy. The dude was not a big man, but he had the heart of a lion. One of my brothers, actually both of my brothers were very familiar with him, but one of my brothers did a little time with him in juvenile hall in 1994, right before Joaquin ended up going to YA for some stuff that he got caught up for. And I remember my brother telling me about him when everything happened, which I'll get into here in a little bit. When everything happened with the Fresno police officer and all that stuff, I remember my brother telling me, yeah, that fool was always crazy like that. That fool didn't give a damn. That fool didn't care. He was ready for whatever. He was down for whatever. He was ready for action. And I remember my other brother telling me, yeah, that fool's down. That fool's with the business. That fool don't give a damn. That fool's ready to go. He's ready to ride. He's looking for anything. He wouldn't shy away from anything. Like they say nowadays, he wouldn't turn anything down. He wouldn't turn a fade down. He wouldn't turn a shootout down. He wouldn't turn knife to knife. The dude was with the business. And before I go any further, I want people to know that this in no way, shape, or form is trying to glorify or trying to sensationalize what Joaquin Maltos Figueroa, better known as Scrappy, ended up doing. And you see, when you understand what kind of guy he was, what kind of kid he was, growing up in the tough streets of Eastside Fresno, California, you know who he was running with. He was running with a few homies, all from that Eastside Fresno Bulldog gang. That's what they repped. That's what they did. That's what they loved doing. And in those days, a lot of homies, most of them, that were repping, they were with the business. You couldn't just be anybody out there talking about you're going to do this, you're going to do that. No, you had to do it. Most of the homies back then didn't do much talking, and both of my brothers were very familiar with him. And my brother was telling me when he was in juvenile hall with him in 94, right before Scrappy went up to YA, that Scrappy had got into it with a couple of people in there, that he was always like, he was very temperamental. The guy had a short fuse. He'd start a lot of shit because he was just that type of dude. He just loved conflict. He loved problems. He loved getting down. He loved the interaction. He was with the business, how they say. So, when you understand that, you'll understand why Joaquin Maltos Figueroa, Scrappy, lived the life that he did, ultimately went out the way that he did. You see, it was crazy because where this took place, what ultimately led to his demise, was shooting of a motor cop in my neighborhood. Like, I didn't own the neighborhood and I didn't bang the neighborhood, but it's where I lived for most of my life, off of Fresno Street in Floridora in Fresno, California. I lived on Fresno and Olive for a big chunk of my life, and it was right just north of that. You see, Joaquin was already being investigated. He was already wanted in the missing, of a woman that had been missing. And the investigation was leading to the cops to look at Joaquin Figueroa because there was a female by the name of Debbie Hawk that ended up coming up missing. And, the report says that Figueroa, 25, is the primary suspect in the shooting of Fresno police officer Brian Nieto, 32, because this is what happened. He had been wanted already in investigation for the female Debbie Hawk, who ended up coming up missing. She was from Hanford, California. Somehow, some way, the police officers believed that Joaquin Figueroa, Scrappy, was involved in this somehow. So they had been looking for him, and they wanted to question him. Well, one day he's driving north on Fresno Street, passes Olive, when officer from the Fresno Police Department, motor cop, Brian Nieto, seen a man in a vehicle coming towards him as he's going south on Fresno Street, and he notices that the driver, who's by himself in the vehicle, has no seatbelt on. Well, that's against the law in California and most states in the United States. So Mr. Nieto, what does he do? He makes a U-turn, gets behind the vehicle, makes an attempt to pull the vehicle over. Unbeknownst to him, the driver occupying the vehicle is none other than Joaquin Maltos Figueroa, better known as Scrappy, Eastside Fresno Bulldog representative, and representing it to the fullest. Just keep it a buck. Keep it a C-note. Keep it a billy goat. And when he goes to pull over, Joaquin, who, by the way, was named after a Mexican outlaw, right? Joaquin Murrieta, who wasn't no slouch on his own account. That man was a legend in his own right. So Joaquin Figueroa, Scrappy, makes like he's going to pull over, pulls over to the curb. Officer Brian Nieto begins to make his way off of his bike, off of his motorcycle, trying to stand it up, trying to park, to walk up to the vehicle. And that's when the occupant driving the vehicle, unbeknownst to Brian Nieto at the time, was Joaquin Figueroa, ended up pulling out a pistol, dumping rounds at the officer, striking him 3 times. Then he sped off. And you see, when he did that, I remember the news. I remember Jerry Dyer, who was chief of Fresno police at the time. And I remember what he was saying on the news, and I'm just paraphrasing here. But it was to the effect of that he didn't like what had happened to one of his officers, and that basically they were going to do what they had to bring Joaquin Figueroa, Scrappy, to justice by any means necessary. And when we seen that on the news, we already knew that he was done, that if they had got their hands on him, he wasn't going to be alive. And you see, the crazy part about this, all of it's crazy, but what's even more crazier is that maybe an hour or two before he ended up shooting the Fresno police officer, Brian Nieto, who later survived his wounds because doctors saved him at the hospital. He was taken there by ambulance. Other officers came on the scene and helped him and saved his life. Thank God. He was just doing his job. He didn't know what he was getting into. But you see, Joaquin was already on the run, and he knew that he could not be arrested. He couldn't be detained or anything because he knew he was done because he was already wanted in connection with the missing woman, Debbie Hawk, from Hanford, California. So that's the reason why he pulled the gun out, shot Mr. Nieto, sped off. There was a manhunt for him. You know, like I said, a couple hours before that, he was living, you see, during this time, he was living down the street from me. I was living on White and Clark. That's Fresno, California. That's in the vicinity of Clark and Belmont. There's a bingo market right there with the, you know, with the laundromat next to it, jewelry store and all that. We lived in some apartments behind there, a duplex, a fourplex. He lived at the corner, Diana and White. There's a dead end. His sister lived in some apartments right there. His sister, by the way, was with the business too. His sister Dora, I've heard many accounts. Many people know her. She wasn't anyone to mess with either. Very hot-headed, very temperamental. And she, too, is with the business. She's with the gang stuff. She ain't messing around. But anyways, she stayed down the street, so Joaquin frequented over there. And I had seen him a couple times that week talking to one of my brothers out in the front. I went up there, seen him. He's like, what's up, dog? Hey, what's up, bro? You know, whatever. I didn't know him like that, but I knew who he was. My brothers knew him very well. So I remember my brother saying, yeah, that fool's, you know, he's tripping, fool. That fool's on a good one right now. He don't give a fuck. He's looking for, you know, trying to get into something. We didn't know that he was being investigated for, you know, in the missing case of Debbie Hawk, the woman from Hanford, California. But he was talking to my brothers and he ended up taking off. 2 hours later, that shooting was all over the news. And we were like, what the hell? Like, we just seen this dude. But many people were not shocked at what Scrappy did, at what Joaquin Figueroa ended up doing. They weren't surprised because he was like that. He was a torpedo. He didn't care. The dude was not afraid of anything. He was fearless. Doesn't mean it was right what he did, but he was fearless. So I remember after the shooting, word started to spread through the street that he knew that he was going to be killed by Fresno Police Department. So he wanted to try to set up where he could give himself up, you know, peacefully and deal with it in court. But when they got an anonymous tip, found out that the sister and his girlfriend were aiding and abetting him down there on Recreation Street, they showed up. Joaquin was unarmed this time. He was in a vehicle. He was trying to get into the back seat when the officers, in broad daylight, opened fire on him, striking him twice, killing him. And the rumor in the street was that he was just killed because of what he did to Officer Brian Nieto, trying to kill him, shooting him 3 times in the line of duty when he was just making a traffic stop. The guy did not know that he was running into a stone cold killer and a dude that is with the business, and he's, like they say in the streets, banging it to the fullest. He didn't know who he was running into. He didn't know he was running into that guy. Joaquin didn't care. He did what he did. Ended up meeting his demise because they killed him in cold blood. They shot him in that car, hitting him twice. He died on the scene. I remember the press conference again from Chief Jerry Dyer at the time, who is now the mayor of Fresno, California, by the way. And he seemed to gloat. He seemed to be happy because he got redemption, you know? And I can understand that. Hey, you can't just be running around like a psycho, like a crazy man, shooting anybody, doing whatever you want. But you see, Joaquin Figueroa, Scrappy, for lack of better words, he didn't give a fuck. He didn't care. The guy was always like that. Ask anybody that knew him. Ask anybody that knew him. The dude was a torpedo. The dude was what they call a hothead. The dude was very temperamental. He had a short fuse. Any way you want to call it, any way you want to slice it. Scrappy didn't care. Didn't give a you-know-what. So I remember after he was shot and killed by Fresno Police Department on recreation in the vehicle right there, you know, there was word in the streets that there was a crackdown on bulldogs after that. I remember that's around the time when Chief Jerry Dyer made it a point to have a press conference, and I think it might have been during that press conference. I can't find the videos of that. They're like taken off or whatever. But if I remember correctly, it's when he basically waged war against the Fresno Bulldog Gang because, you know, the reports, everyone knew in the news that Joaquin Figueroa, East Side Fresno Bulldog, attempted murder on a peace officer. And so once you throw that out there, it's curtains. And basically after the killing of Joaquin, I remember Jerry Dyer basically saying that he was going to make it hell for any Fresno Bulldogs that wanted to operate in the city of Fresno, that he was going to do whatever he had to do to make sure that gang disappeared, either by going to jail, by figuring out something else to do, or by simply relocating to another city, another state. He did not care as long as he got them out of Fresno. And many homies took that as, all right, we got targets on our back. And through the years, there's been a few bulldogs that have been shot by Fresno police officers and killed. Some of them had it coming, some of them didn't. But my point here is with Joaquin is this was this guy's destiny. He wasn't afraid of the grave. He wasn't afraid to die. You see, these guys that are really bangers, they're not out here on TV. They're not out here making music videos. They're not out here rapping. They're not working. They don't have regular 9-to-5s. These guys are out actually banging, putting in work, hurting people, killing people, doing whatever they can for the advancement of their gang and the advancement of themselves and to sew on that next stripe. Kicking up dust to guys like Joaquin Figueroa, Scrappy, they do that shit in their sleep. They were born to do this. Joaquin Figueroa was no slouch. Joaquin Figueroa was no punk. Joaquin Figueroa was a hothead. He was trigger happy, and he was going to do whatever he had to do to get away. Ultimately, you see how that played out. You see how that plan did not come into fruition for him. Instead, a man by the name of Jerry Dyer made it his personal quest, his personal mission to make sure that Joaquin Maltos Figueroa, Scrappy, Eastside Fresno Bulldog representative, repping it to the fullest, Jerry Dyer made sure that he was going to wipe that guy off the map. He made sure that Joaquin Figueroa was not going to be able to fight this case in the court of law, in the Superior Court of Fresno, California, against the state. He was not going to give him that chance because at that point, Jerry Dyer didn't care about the rule of law. It was personal at that point. Who do you punks, and I'm talking like if I was Jerry Dyer, who do you punks think you are? Gonna come in here and you're gonna shoot at my officers and think you're gonna get away with it? You got another thing coming. Because what we're gonna do is, we're not gonna try to arrest you. We're not gonna try to talk to you. If you even think of harming one of my officers, simply just gonna get rid of you. I know homies. I have family members that were gang stalked by Fresno Police Department. That is another video, but Joaquin Figueroa, Scrappy, he was an outlaw. He was an Eastside Fresno Bulldog. And like I said before, this video in no way, shape, or form is to gloat, glorify, or sensationalize gang life or harming peace officers, because I'm not with that. simply here dropping this. This is knowledge that's out there, but also there's a little knowledge that not many people are going to speak about and not many people know about. But personally, the times that I met Joaquin Figueroa, the dude was respectful, but you could see that he was just waiting for something. You know what I'm saying? He was waiting for something. Whenever I seen him interacting with my brothers, it was always cool. The handshakes were there. You know what I mean? The good energy was there. There was a couple of times when he was younger. He had some words with one of my brothers, but they ironed that shit out and everything was cool moving forward. And like my other brother said, when they were in juvenile hall together, Joaquin was 14, my brother was 16. He was on his way to YA. He didn't give a shit. My brother's like, he didn't care. He was waiting for it. Like I said, the dude was small, but he was a scrapper. That's why they called him Scrappy. Because the dude didn't shy away from anything. The dude was ready to meet death right in the face if that's what it took to show that he's with that business, to show that he's going to represent that Eastside Fresno Bulldog gang to the fullest. People can say a lot of things about Joaquin Figueroa, Scrappy. They can call him a lot of things, but one thing you can't call him is a punk. One thing you can't call him is a wannabe. One thing you cannot call this guy is afraid. Because if anything, this guy lived up to his name, Joaquin, named after the Mexican outlaw, Joaquin Murrieta, where the San Joaquin Valley is named after him. So history kind of repeats itself. There's just some energy that never leaves this plane. Regardless if the body goes, the energy stays. It just transfers. You see, Scrappy, he went out the only way a lot of real homies go out, and that's dying young. A lot of homies cheated death young many times, and they're lucky to still be here and talk about it. A lot of other homies didn't get that chance. And you see, one thing you got to understand about Fresno, California, and one thing you got to understand about the Fresno Bulldogs is from the 80s, 90s, and even some of the 2000s, and even now, there's still some solid dudes out there, but it's really watered down just like everywhere else. But when you're dealing with guys like Joaquin, Maltos Figueroa, Scrappy, you're dealing with the best. When it comes to the streets and it comes to that gangbanging shit, you're dealing with the best. You're dealing with the real. You're dealing with a raw and uncut individual. You're not just dealing with Joaquin Figueroa. You're not just dealing with Scrappy. You're dealing with an energy, an entity, a demon that you don't want no parts of. You're dealing with something that you can't come back from once you engage. You're dealing with something that will take you down a rabbit hole that you will never be able to get out of. So who was Joaquin Maltos Figueroa? Scrappy. At the end of the day, he was a son, he was a brother, uncle, cousin, but ultimately, he was a gangster. Yeah, Joaquin Figueroa, Scrappy, was an Eastside Fresno Bulldog. And whether it was right or not, he went out like a gangster. He went out like a straight G. He died in the street, held court in the street. And that's the way that story ended. That's the way that saga came to a close. Yo, Joaquin Figueroa, Scrappy, hey, all I can tell you is the guy left his mark. Whether it was positive or negative, when a dude is really out there with the business and he's really out there putting in work and he's really doing what he swore he would do when he joined it, when he stepped in, and when he got jumped in. Ultimately, this is possibly going to be the outcome. You're going to end up dead or in jail. Some homies get lucky enough to have second and third chances. They turn to the church. Some of them get shot up and stabbed, end up crippled or disabled. Most of them die. Because gang life, real gang life, ain't about what you see on TV. Real gang life ain't what you see in a damn movie. Real gang life is at the cemetery. Real gang life is at the drug programs. Real gang life ends up in church, in jail, or in a plot, or in a urn, earlier than you were supposed to be. This has been Raw and Uncut. Hope you dig the video. Hope I did it due diligence. Rest in peace to the little homie, Joaquin Maltos Figueroa, a.k.a. Scrappy. Peace to his family. My respects to his family. Also, my respects to the Fresno Police Department. My respects to Officer Brian Nieto, who had to retire a few years after being shot because he couldn't physically handle it. My respects to his family for what they went through, because he didn't deserve that either. But at the same time, like it's dangerous for them officers out there in the streets, you best believe it's dangerous for people walking them streets claiming to be something that they aren't. Because the ones that are with the business are with the business. And the ones that ain't with the business, you know how that story goes. Like, share, subscribe. Thank you for watching, sharing, and thank you for being here. I appreciate your interaction. Drop a comment down in the comment section. Let me know how you feel about it. Fresno, you're in the house. And like we always do about this time, we out.